The year was 1883. In the northwestern part of Europe lay a small town barely traceable on maps, Bellenstadt. Its gray stone buildings, moss-covered chapel roofs, and streets where only the echo of footsteps could be heard were perpetually shrouded in mist. Even during the day, the sky remained cloaked in ash-colored clouds. At the northern edge of the town rose a hill known among the locals as cursed, the Hill of Ravens. Edward, Lucien, and Samuel were three close friends who had grown up in Bellenstadt. Their childhood had been shaped by wandering through the town's narrow alleys, crumbling homes, and occasionally its forbidden places. But what truly bound them wasn't a shared past, it was a shared curiosity. They had a relentless hunger for mysteries, taboos, and old folk tales. Whenever an old villager whispered about someone who had vanished near the hill or spoke of the eerie sounds from the church's cellar, the three would silently glance at each other, their eyes asking the same unspoken question. What if we went there? That October, a cold wind swept through the town. Every morning, dead birds were found on doorsteps, and at night, distant bell tolls echoed across the hills. The people of Bellenstadt began to whisper an old legend again, the awakening of the Hill of Ravens. Lucien, who worked in the town's small library, was a quiet but intelligent man. During one of his archive searches, he found a journal dating back to the 1700s. The journal spoke of the eye that sleeps on the hill and claimed that once awakened, it would cause shadows to speak with men. The idea seemed absurd at first, but the evidence Lucien showed piqued Samuel's interest. Edward, as usual, remained cautious, but he couldn't let his friends venture alone. During the last week of October, the air grew colder. It was Saturday night, and a new moon hung in the sky. The townsfolk locked their doors, and the streets became deathly silent. That night, the three friends decided to ascend the Hill of Ravens. They brought only a lantern each, an old compass, thick coats, and Lucien's notebook, filled with copied passages from the journal. The path was rocky and tangled with ivy. Mist rolled down the hill, swirling around their ankles. The wind whistled through the underbrush, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called out. Atop the hill stood a half-collapsed observation tower. It was said priests had once used it to watch the stars, but years ago lightning struck it, burning its books and rendering the structure lifeless. According to Lucien, the journal claimed there was a passage beneath the tower. It also noted that several people had tried to enter but were never seen again. The door to the tower was chained, but rust had weakened the links. Breaking them took little effort. Inside, the air reeked of burnt wood and dampness. They lit their lanterns and moved forward. The stairs leading upward had rotted away, but Lucien was interested in what lay below. In the center of the stone floor was a barely noticeable metal ring. Lucien pulled a slender iron rod from his coat and wedged it into the ring, lifting with effort. The floor gave way with a deep groan, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The three held their lanterns high and began their descent. Each step echoed underfoot, and dust rained from the ceiling. At the bottom, they found themselves in a corridor leading to a large underground room. The walls were blackened with dampness. Strange symbols and Latin inscriptions covered the stones, along with cryptic drawings they couldn't understand. Lucien eagerly jotted down notes, while Samuel examined the walls. Edward stayed behind, glancing nervously over his shoulder. He felt as though the place were alive. At the corridor's end stood a massive door. Its surface was adorned with symbols hammered in with iron nails. To the side, carved into a stone plaque, were the words, "He who opens the eye learns to see through the dark." Lucien whispered that the same phrase had been at the end of the journal. They pushed open the door, and a gust of cold air hit their faces. Inside was a large circular chamber with a high, crumbling ceiling. In the center stood what resembled a marble altar, surrounded by ancient, unlit oil lamps. The floor was a mosaic, but the images depicted weren't religious. They showed screaming faces, figures gazing into blackness, and grotesque beasts with too many limbs. This was not a place of worship. It was a passage or a shrine of offering. Lucien circled the altar, then suddenly fell to his knees. His eyes were wide. Edward and Samuel rushed to his side. Lucien pointed at a symbol drawn in dust upon the altar, an eye, etched with a single trembling finger. "This is it," he whispered. "The sleeping eye, exactly like in the journal." Samuel stepped closer and touched the symbol. Instantly, a low hum filled the chamber. One by one, the oil lamps lit themselves. Flickering flames cast twitching shadows across the walls. Shapes moved near the ceiling, like tendrils of black mist. The walls pulsed as though breathing. Edward stepped back in horror, the heavy door now sealed behind them. Lucien stood suddenly, his voice no longer his own. "The eye is waking. We called it. It will see us." As Samuel and Edward approached him, they saw that Lucien's eyes had turned entirely black. He collapsed, trembling, his body convulsing as though something within him struggled to break free. At the same time, cracks spread through the altar beneath the eye symbol. Samuel grabbed Lucien and tried to pull him away, but Lucien shoved him back with inhuman strength. Edward backed away, whispering prayers under his breath. From beneath the altar, black smoke erupted. But it wasn't smoke, it was something else. It moved as though it had mass and form, yet no shape. There were no eyes, yet it saw. Mouths twisted open in the mist, voiceless yet screaming. Lucien's body was slowly lifted onto the altar by some unseen force. Samuel lunged forward, clinging to his friend's arms, but Lucien's body began to melt. His flesh turned to wax, slowly dripping away until nothing remained but the echo of his last breath. Samuel stumbled back, tears streaming down his face. Edward grabbed him, pulling him toward the sealed door. The shadows filled the chamber. The lanterns flickered, then extinguished. Darkness pressed in. Suddenly the door cracked. A narrow passage formed through the stone. Without a word, Edward and Samuel ran. Behind them, screams echoed, not from a human throat, but something deeper, older. They climbed the stairs, gasping for breath. When they emerged into the tower, the sun was rising for the first time in years. The mist began to retreat. They turned back, but the tower door had collapsed, the passage beneath gone. It was as if it had never existed. Lucien was gone. Only his burned notebook remained. Edward and Samuel never spoke of what happened. They left Bellenstadt in silence, each haunted by visions of Lucien, his empty eyes watching from beyond. The Hill of Ravens remained, as it always had, and each morning a villager found a dead bird at its base, because the eye had opened, and now the darkness sees.